Picture the dream for a second. A house by the water. Yours. You walk in, drop the bags, and the salt air is already coming through the screen door. No check-in, no packing up on Sunday, no strangers' furniture. Just your place, waiting for you whenever you want it. For a huge number of people, that beach house or that cabin in the mountains is the single clearest picture they have of what making it looks like. So they chase it. They run the numbers on a $500,000 second home and tell themselves that one day, when the timing is right, they will finally buy the dream. But that dream is hiding a math problem that almost nobody runs before they sign. So let's run it. Not to kill the dream, to rescue the part of it that was actually worth having. Because the experience you are picturing, the mornings by the water, that part is real and it's wonderful. The $500,000 liability you were told to buy to get it is the part we need to talk about. This is the real math on the vacation home. And by the end, you'll see the door most people walk right past. Start with the price tag because it's worse than the sticker. The median second home in America now sells for around $495,000. That's the median, the middle of the market, not some oceanfront mansion. And the purchase price is the smallest part of the story. The part that quietly destroys people is the carrying cost. The money the house demands every single year just to sit there and exist. Property taxes, insurance, which on a coastal or vacation property is brutal. Utilities you pay year-round for a place you visit a handful of times. Maintenance, repairs, landscaping, the dock, the deck, the roof. As a rule of thumb, the annual cost of keeping a second home runs somewhere between 1% and 4% of its value every year before you've had a single good weekend there. Put real numbers on it. Industry estimates put the yearly carrying cost of a $400,000 vacation home at more than $30,000 a year. And that is often before furnishings, before the boat, before the surprise that the well needs replacing. On a home in the $500,000 to $1.5 million range, carrying costs commonly land between $20,000 and $50,000 a year. If you financed it, with a down payment and a mortgage at today's rates, the all-in annual cost can exceed 7.5% of the purchase price. Year after year after year. The house doesn't care whether you showed up. Now the number that breaks the whole thing open. How much do people actually use these places? Be honest with yourself here. When researchers look at how second home owners actually behave, the majority use the property for fewer than 4 to 6 weeks a year. 4 to 6 weeks. Let's be generous and call it a full month. That means the house you spent $500,000 on, the house bleeding $30,000 a year, sits dark and empty for around 11 months out of 12. You are paying, in full, for a home that is unoccupied roughly 90% of the time. You bought a feeling you get for 4 weeks and a bill you pay for 52. Here's the question almost nobody asks before they buy. What is it actually costing you per trip? Take that $30,000 a year in carrying costs. Spread it across the 4 weeks you genuinely use the place. That is roughly $7,500 per week of use, and that's just the running costs. It doesn't even count the $500,000 of your money locked inside the walls. Money that isn't earning you a cent while it sits there as drywall and a view. When you look at it per trip, the dream starts to look less like freedom and a lot more like the most expensive hotel room you will ever pay for. And it gets sharper because there's a hidden cost on top of the cash. That down payment. Call it $100,000 to keep it simple. If you had invested that $100,000 instead of sinking it into a second mortgage, at a reasonable long-term return it could roughly double in about a decade, all on its own while you slept. That is the money you no longer earn. It's invisible, so nobody counts it, but it is just as real as the property tax bill. The vacation home doesn't just cost you what you pay. It costs you everything that money could have become. Let me make that per trip number impossible to unsee. Say you own the place for 10 years and, being honest, you use it 3 weeks a year. That's 30 weeks of real use across the whole decade. Over those 10 years, you've paid maybe $300,000 in carrying costs alone, and your $100,000 down payment quietly gave up another $100,000 or so in growth it could have earned elsewhere. Call it $400,000 of true cost, spread across 30 weeks of actual enjoyment. That is over $13,000 for every single week you set foot in the place. $13,000 a week for a house you told yourself was a smart buy. You could have rented the nicest home on the beach every one of those weeks and pocketed the difference of a small fortune. And then there's the trap that wears the dream's exact costume, the timeshare. It is sold as the affordable way into the vacation home fantasy, a slice of paradise for a fraction of the price. In reality, it is the worst of both worlds. You pay upfront for a week you may not even get when you want it, and then you pay maintenance fees that rise every single year forever, whether you go or not, with almost no way out and almost nothing to sell at the end. It is ownership's costs with none of ownership's freedom. If the regular vacation home is a liability in disguise, the timeshare is a liability with a lock on the door. Walk past it. The honest rental was always the smarter, freer move. So here is the secret the genuinely wealthy figured out a long time ago, the one this whole channel keeps coming back to. They don't buy the thing. They buy the experience, and they let someone else carry the liability. They access instead of own. And here is the proof it's not just a clever line. Demand for second homes recently fell to its lowest level in 6 years. The people with the means to buy them are increasingly choosing not to, because the math stopped making sense. They worked out that you can have every good part of the beach house and skip almost every bad part. Let me show you the menu. Route 1 is the obvious one, and it's still the one most people underrate. You rent the exact experience, only on the weeks you'll actually use it. The average vacation rental in America goes for somewhere around $300 a night, and a comfortable full house often runs closer to $600. Sounds like a lot until you do the comparison. 2 full weeks a year in a beautiful rented home, even at the high end, might cost you $8,000 or $9,000. The owner sitting next to you on that same beach is paying $30,000 a year for the privilege, plus the $500,000 locked in the walls. You got the identical sunrise for a fraction of the price, and you can walk away anytime, with no roof to replace. Here's a question for you, and I genuinely want your answer in the comments. If you could spend 2 perfect weeks a year at the beach for $9,000, or own the house for $30,000 a year, and use it the same 2 weeks, which one actually sounds like the smarter version of rich to you? Be honest. Drop it below, because I think the answer tells you something about how you've been taught to think about money. Route 2 is variety, and it's something ownership can never give you. When you rent, you are not married to one zip code. The Gulf this year, a mountain cabin next winter, a lake in the fall. The owner is stuck driving 4 hours to the same house every single time, partly because they feel guilty about all the money it's costing them to sit empty. You, on the other hand, get a different dream every year for less than what they pay in property tax. Freedom isn't owning one door. It's having the keys to 1,000 of them whenever you want, and owing nothing the rest of the time. Route 3 is for the person who genuinely wants a financial stake, not just a vacation. If you truly believe in the location, you can buy a fractional share, a 1/8 or 1/4 interest in a property through a co-ownership setup, and split every cost and every responsibility with other owners. You get a few weeks of guaranteed use, and you pay a fraction of the carrying cost. Or you treat it as a pure investment and let it earn its keep. A well-run short-term rental in a strong market can pull meaningful income, but notice the key difference. In that version, the house is a business that pays you, not a trophy that drains you. The trap is buying a liability and calling it an investment. A real investment puts money in your pocket. The empty beach house only ever takes it out. Now scale the lesson, because the beach house is just one example of a pattern that runs through your entire financial life. The same trap is set around almost every expensive dream you've been sold. The boat that sits in a marina 11 months a year becomes a charter or a boat club membership for the few days you actually sail. The RV that depreciates in your driveway becomes a rental for the one road trip you take. The country club, the second car, the timeshare. In every single case, the move is identical. Separate the experience you actually want from the expensive object you were told to buy to get it, and then go buy the experience by itself, directly, for a tiny fraction of the price. The wealthy aren't the ones with the most stuff. They are the ones who refuse to let their dreams turn into liabilities. And this is why the vacation home myth is so quietly expensive. It tells a hard-working person that the dream costs $500,000 plus $30,000 a year forever, so they either bury themselves to get it or they give up on it entirely. Both of those are the wrong answer. The right answer is that the actual dream, the mornings by the water with the people you love, was always available for a few $1,000s a year, with no mortgage, no maintenance, and the freedom to change your mind. They didn't need to own the coast. They just needed to wake up next to it a couple of weeks a year, which is all they were ever really going to do anyway. So let me leave you with the real math. The $500,000 house was never the dream. The salt air through the screen door, the coffee on the deck while the water goes gold, the people you love asleep down the hall, that was the dream. And that dream has a price tag a lot closer to a nice vacation than to a second mortgage. The only thing standing between most people and the beach was the belief that they had to buy the whole house to enjoy a morning beside it. You never did, and now you know the math. If this changed how you think about one expensive thing you've been telling yourself you can't have, there are a lot more of these, the real math behind the life you actually want. Subscribe, and let's keep decoding it together.